Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. How are you, Nat?
I'm wonderful, Sammy. How are you, my love?
You're not fantastic today. You're just wonderful.
Well, I'm fantastic and wonderful.
Oh, I love it.
I'm all the good
Like you
things.
surprise me with all your feelings of wonderfulness and fantastic. I never know what word you're going to use. You've been using fantastic a lot. So I just assumed it was going to be that. You're changing pace. Uh, Look at me ranting on about crap. So today sorry about that, everyone. We're going to be chatting about something that I discovered when I became I never really knew about these
Mm.
when I was, before I was a nutritionist. This was something that I
Oh,
sort of discovered along my
yes.
journey. And it was because I was seeing clients with more and more of this particular intolerance. And I was like, wow, this is actually a thing. We're going to be talking about histamines because quite often the symptom with having a histamine intolerance can be seen as anxiety symptoms. And on the anxiety
Yes,
compass, we're all about finding out all the reasons why you could be feeling anxious. And it could be because you're eating and not even being able to break down the amount of histamines going into your body. I've said histamines a
exactly.
lot, haven't I? Histamine, histamine,
Yeah.
histamine. Um,
So look, let's ask the questions. Think about this. Have you ever felt anxious for absolutely no reason? Your heart starts racing, you feel hot and flushed, your mind is spinning, maybe you can't sleep, and you think, what is wrong with me? So
yeah,
yeah, that's what we're going to do a deep dive in to that
yeah,
histamine because
exactly.
because every case of it's not every case of anxiety has a histamine issue, but for some people this can create symptoms that really do feel like anxiety, like having an anxiety disorder.
Yes. And I often wonder, like, researching and doing what we do and looking at all the different points of the compass, some of them overlap. And so for me, a
Hmm.
hormonal dysregulation can also be impacting on a histamine bucket, which we're going to talk about later. So,
Exactly. And that's
um,
why it's really
yeah.
important to see, we provide information on this podcast, but that's why it's really essential to go and see a qualified practitioner so that they
Yes.
can,
Have that
go through the
conversation.
whole
Mm.
history and work out what exactly it is. Because as you said, there is a lot of overlap, so we need to know what it is.
Yes. Now, histamines. When I say histamines, people think hay fever, they think antihistamines. I've got friends that pop antihistamines all the time, and if they're listening,
Oh,
they
me
know I'm
too.
talking about them. We
Yeah.
think spring, all of the plants that come out. I've got friends that their eyes water the whole time in spring. It's just too much
Yeah.
for them. But
Yeah, me too.
histamines are actually a normal chemical messenger in the body. Nat, what is a histamine? I mean, it's a chemical messenger, but what does it help with? What does it do in the body?
Well, it helps us with our immune function, our digestion, and along with that, our stomach acid, so our hydrochloric acid, our wakefulness, and also how our brain communicates. So it's really not the enemy. It has a lot of
Mm.
beneficial processes within our body. But the problem comes when there can be too much histamine. So, from a high histamine diet, you may have heard that, like an antihistamine diet,
Mm.
or the body is struggling to break down the histamine that is there because it is a normal response in our body and we need it. We actually
I'm
need it.
wondering whether people who take antihistamines all the time are actually, when you take too much of something and then your body's like, oh, well, I don't need to make that anymore because they're taking this.
Exactly,
Like, I wonder
100%.
whether it's having a negative effect. I
Yeah,
mean,
correct.
interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So histamine's a bit like that friend who's great at parties until they've overstayed their welcome. I've got a few friends like that. Get out. It's 2 in the morning. Oh no, I'm more
Yeah,
like, get out, it's
leave
nine
now.
o'clock. I want to go to bed. But we got here at 8. That's your problem. I find when you're talking about not sleeping and heart pounding in that, the thing that I
Mm.
think of is red wine. I used to drink red wine a lot. I used to have a glass before bed. And when I stopped drinking red wine, I could sleep. My heart wasn't pounding and my mind wasn't racing. So for me, that was showing that I was tipping over that histamine bucket, which we're going to talk about in a minute,
Yeah.
every
For me, it was
time.
actually eggplant and
Oh, I can't
tomatoes
eat
and
eggplant.
strawberries.
I can't eat
Yeah.
eggplant. It makes my whole mouth turn into chaos. But yeah, so
Mm.
let's talk about histamine rich foods because you were saying that it can be in foods, and we just mentioned
Yes.
red wine.
A couple
There's
of them. Yeah.
the aged foods, fermented, and foods that are stored for longer. So what are some examples of them? Because there's different types of foods that carry the
Yes.
histamines.
Absolutely. So, your smoked meats, your salamis, your leftovers. This is a really, really big one. It's something that I find in my clinic a lot. So, you cook your dinner, you have your leftovers the next day,
A lot
and
of
all of a
people live
sudden
off
you're getting this.
leftovers.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly.
Mm.
Because histamine actually continues to increase the longer the food is sitting there.
Yeah.
Um, and your fermented foods. So, we talk a lot about fermented foods, how great they are for our gut and our microbiome. However, in some people, that's actually having a counterproductive issue. So, your sauerkrauts, your kimchi,
Mm.
um, soy sauce, and vinegar.
Some people
They can
pour them on.
also they're high in histamine.
Mm.
So yeah. So it's a bit of, again, seeing someone professional, because like it's good for your gut, but it can also increase histamine.
Mm. And then when you're
So,
saying fermented foods, like when you think of wine, like
yes.
that's a
Wine
form of
and
fermentation, and
champagne,
beer, and even like
beer.
aged cheeses. Like if you're going out for
Mm.
a girls' night, you've got a cheese platter with, all of your salamis, smoked meats. You're having a glass of champagne,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
some cheeses. Maybe there's a little bit of sauerkraut on there too. Oh my, that's just a lot of
hmm.
histamine going on there, isn't
There
it?
really is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then,
And then chocolate.
oh,
Add to
no.
that
Yeah.
board, yeah, I know. I know. I'm sorry. Alcohol and chocolate. Like, how many people reach for those sorts of things as a comfort? I'm
Yeah,
so
but chocolate's more, it's not so much full of histamines though. It's more
no,
something that releases the histamines. Because I've
absolutely. So
seen
if
it
you
come up
already
in a
got
lot of
that
allergy tests.
sensitivity, yes.
It
Yeah,
comes up on
exactly.
mine. I shouldn't eat chocolate, and every time I do,
No. And
I
if
feel
you've got
sick.
if you've got a known histamine intolerance going on, it's advisable to at least cut back on the chocolate until that has been resolved, which it
Isn't
can
it?
be.
It's interesting because when I was younger, before I was a nutritionist, I used to have four big pieces of dark chocolate because, it's good for you. And I'd have a
Yeah,
glass of red wine because, it's good for you. And, the science is out there that these are great choices. And I was thought I was doing myself a good thing having a glass of red and some squares of dark chocolate because that's what
yeah,
people tell you
that's
to
what.
do, right?
Yes.
But
Yep.
it was making me not sleep. So
Yeah.
anyway, continue
Exactly.
on. What are
So,
some?
and
Did
then
you?
foods, your tomato,
Yeah.
as I mentioned before, for me, it was tomatoes, strawberries, and eggplant. Some
Yes.
citrus fruits in some individuals. That's not a real common one, but it can be.
Yeah.
And processed foods as well.
Yeah. And I want to be very clear that we're not demonizing these foods. We're simply pointing out that some of
No.
them can tip over that histamine bucket, and we'll talk more on that in a moment.
Yes. Yeah.
But I often say, because I get a lot of kids that love strawberries, and parents will say to me in my workshops that that's the only fruit that they'll eat, and they give them like a whole punnet, and I'm like, you just be mindful because they're quite high in histamines and can
Yeah.
cause issues. So, and it's funny because some of those kids are the ones that are on antihistamines. Interesting.
Very,
Um,
very interesting, right?
yeah, but it's not just that. Like for me, when I was at my worst, my gut health was playing a huge part in me not being able to break down those histamines. So, um, yeah, that it plays a role in it, doesn't it?
It really does, absolutely, because a healthy gut helps to regulate the inflammation and supports that normal histamine metabolism. Because histamine, as we said, is a normal process in the body, but it's
Mm,
the way the body deals with the histamine. So if you've
yeah.
got, IBS dysbiosis, which is, not a healthy microbiome,
Mm,
SIBO, leaky gut, chronic gut inflammation, they may actually produce more histamine or struggle to break it down and manage it effectively.
yeah. And is it true that some gut bacteria actually produce
They
histamines as
literally
well?
do, yep. And
Ugh,
there
and
and
others
then there
break
are
it
other
down. Yeah.
specific ones that help to break it down. So having a
Oh,
healthy gut, again,
bloody
everyone
bugs in
has
our
to.
butt. Oh, in our butt, in our gut. I said the bloody
Well,
bugs
they're
in our
yeah,
gut. Well, kind of. They're in our butt.
yeah,
That's hilarious.
same tract. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
but
yeah.
they're always up to something, aren't they?
They
Um,
really are. I think we're learning more and more about how essential the microbiome is.
Mm.
The science is just revealing more and more as we understand those little critters, those little bugs in our system.
Yeah.
just how big an important role they do play in so many processes, including
Yeah.
histamine, the management of histamine.
Yeah. So when I used to get clients that would come in and they'd have a histamine intolerance, I would often just sort of share with them because they'd want to know what's going on in their body. I mean, I had some clients that were like, just give me the stuff. I don't want to
Yeah.
know. And then some would actually want to know. And so I sort of went into a little bit of the science of it. And I know you're the science lady, so you can back me up on this. You can tell me if I'm wrong, all right. But
Okay.
so the mast cells are the immune cells that act like little security guards. So they're kind of like your body's security system, alarm system, and they're found throughout the body, especially in places like the skin, in your lungs, the digestive tract, which we were just talking about, and in your blood vessels. So when they detect a threat like pollen or infections or injuries, particularly pollen around springtime, they release histamine. So the histamine comes from your mast cells, and normally that's helpful because it stops, that allergy from happening so much. Am I right? And you're looking at me funny.
Yep. Oh, no, 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 sorry. I'm listening to you. I'm listening.
But sometimes those little security comps, they become a little trigger happy and pew, 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 pew. Instead of responding to genuine danger to the body, they're going to overreact to every little thing. And that's when more histamine is released and your body starts flooding it. So imagine if every time someone knocked on your front door, tuk, 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 your home alarm system and sprinklers and your smoke detectors constantly are going off. It's a bit of overreactive mast cells. So that's sort of your body's alarm system going out of control. Your mast cells are constantly releasing histamine. And that's just from being like, if you're sensitive to springtime, you haven't even put any histamine rich food in your body yet. So, yeah, we'll talk about the bucket in just a moment. And then I also often used to really focus on the DAO enzymes with them and
Yeah.
talk about that. I mean, do you want to share a little bit on those?
Yeah, sure. So they're what we call the cleanup crew. They come in. So DAO is DAO. It stands for diamine oxidase. And it's one of our main enzymes that is responsible for breaking down the histamine from food. So histamine comes in, then the DAO helps to clear it away. And factors that if DAO activity is reduced, so we're moving along the pathway, but going backwards, that histamine hangs around in the body for longer. And
No
factors that can
cleanup crew.
include, sorry,
I say no cleanup crew.
no, there's no cleanup crew. So factors that may reduce DAO activity include, again, the gut damage, because the DAO is actually produced in the lining of our small intestine. Certain medications can reduce it. A big one, especially for us, nutrient deficiencies, copper, vitamin C, zinc, vitamin B6 are all involved in histamine metabolism.
Hmm.
And to manage that histamine intolerance, prioritizing the freshest ingredients possible, as histamine can quickly build up in stored foods, as we said. So increasing foods, just as a little thing, with DAO, because people are saying, well, where do I get that? How do I do that?
Yeah.
Foods that are rich in the DAO cofactors, like we said, like B6, vitamin C, copper, zinc. So eating a lot of broccoli, fresh poultry, and apples specifically are rich in the DAO. And of course, there is also can be a genetic component. So some people just naturally produce
Yeah,
less.
I had a lady like that. It was very
Did
painful
you?
for her. She just wasn't producing it. And
Yeah.
poor love, my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'll just
bloody
add in here just a
genetics.
little the micronutrient supplements that can support DAO when diet alone. So mentioning a couple of foods, but sometimes it's insufficient, at least to
Mm,
start with. So for copper and zinc, when taken in appropriate balance, because these work synergistically, they play a vital role in that histamine metabolism. Because zinc supports gut lining repair and immune modulation, so supporting our immune system, while copper is directly involved in that DAO enzymatic function. So without those
mm.
two, and then you've got your
Screwed.
magnesium. We love magnesium. It's so great for our nervous system, so good for so many
We always
things.
talk
And
about magnesium, don't we?
we do. So, and because it contributes to pretty much our every metabolic function in the body.
Mm.
It's just so important. But it also can assist in regulating that histamine release and degradation. So that breakdown of the histamine. And then when paired with the zinc and the copper, they affected synergistically. They all work synergistically in the body. So that's
Yeah.
why we never recommend just taking one single supplement. You really need to know how they all work together. Then you've got your vitamin B6, which is a critical coenzyme in that amino acid metabolism, and has been associated with improved DAO activity, studies are showing. And then we've got our vitamin B12 and our vitamin C especially, also supports that DAO production indirectly through that immune and metabolic pathway. And vitamin C in particular has natural antihistamine properties and may help
Mm.
reduce histamine levels in circulation. So that's one thing I recommend to patients who come to see me who are popping antihistamines is like, let's try vitamin C while we're working in the
Yeah.
background, getting everything right, those foundations right. Try vitamin C rather than antihistamine. See how,
To
and
get rid of that.
it
Yeah.
works.
I
Yeah.
find it interesting because a lot of the nutrients that you were just talking about, a lot of them, stress plays a huge role
Exactly.
in using them up, which we've talked about before. So quite often, the histamine issue. Sorry, Midas is being difficult. I'm just going to pop him on my lap. A lot of the histamine issues can be stress related as well. Like that
Yes,
can be the missing piece. Um,
exactly.
it's interesting because stress doesn't just make anxiety feel worse in your body, like it
No.
accentuates those messages. It can also influence that histamine. And when you're under chronic stress, those cells can become more reactive and more histamines release. And you're chewing through your vitamin C and you're chewing through your magnesium and you're chewing through your zinc. And all of a sudden, you can't sleep. And all of a sudden, your gut health declines. And all of a sudden, you're so stressed and histamine, they're feeding each other. And the more stressed you are, the more histamine you have. And the more histamine you
Yep.
have, the more stressed you are. Oh my gosh. Then
See
it's just
yep,
crazy.
yep.
It's just
You've
one
got
thing leading to the
that
other.
negative feedback loop just happening, and next thing you know, you're an absolute mess, and you don't know what to do, where to start.
Vicious cycle, right? It's
It
always a
really
vicious
is.
cycle. We've got to jump
Yeah.
off the cycle. So, we've been talking about the histamine bucket a bit. What is the histamine bucket, Nat?
Well, yeah, obviously it's our everyday food, our stress, our hormones, our poor sleep, our alcohol consumption, gut issues.
They're all dropping in the
They
bucket. Bum, bum, bum,
all
bum,
they're
bum.
all going into that bucket until it's overflowing, and that's when symptoms appear.
Of histamine
You're
and all
pouring
that.
all this stuff in, and individually on their own, you think, okay, my diet's not great. Oh well, I'm having a little bit more alcohol than I'd like because I'm stressed. So I'm
Mm,
dealing with that I'm having my glass of wine after work. Helps to calm me down.
mm.
And then, yeah, those sort of things then lead
Accumulate.
into hormone issues, gut issues, sleep issues. Put them
Yeah.
all together, and you've just got chaos going on in your body.
Yeah. So
Your
we're not
body.
saying to avoid strawberries, don't eat tomatoes. We're saying,
No, no,
the
no, no.
accumulation effect.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I also find like this is something I mentioned at the start that I find that can kind of cross over. So I've mentioned in a previous podcast that just before I get my period, period, that I get quite overwhelmed and anxious, and a lot of those anxious, it's like the compass ramps up and it's going spinning around in circles. But it wasn't until a few years ago or so I realized that it could be also a histamine intolerance because my body's unable to process those histamines as well, and it's flooded, the bucket's overflowing the week before my period. And normally I can tolerate certain things like chocolate, but all of a sudden, and let's be honest, so many of us reach for chocolate just before we get our period, as well as red wine, it seems to affect me more. And there is a reason for that. There is a hormone histamine connection going on, isn't there? It's like a
Yep.
two-way relationship.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
bidirectional.
Yeah. So you've got the estrogen that stimulates the mast cells. So your estrogen's, whoop whoop, and that encourages them to release more histamine. And then histamine influences estrogen, creating a feedback loop in the same cycle going on there.
Yep.
But yeah, that's not all women, but some women, and it's
No.
me. Wonderful. I love
That
becoming
was
the
me
test
as well,
subject.
because I actually had estrogen dominance. You know,
Yeah.
I had fibroids. I had a lot of issues with estrogen when I was still, menstruating in those reproductive years.
Mm,
Yeah, so I wasn't surprised when I found out that connection because I had a lot of
mm.
histamine issues as well.
I'm thinking it would be in the people in my age bracket as well with perimenopause because it happens with
Mm,
estrogen fluctuations.
that fluctuation.
Yeah, and you're going to get those histamine symptoms. They're going to be more noticeable. So you'll find
Yeah,
that all those wonderful foods you used to eat in your 30s, perhaps
yeah,
you need to switch off the red wine and the aged cheese for a little bit or just
yeah.
limit. I
And
hate
the
telling
cured
people to
meats.
limit, but if you genuinely can't sleep, it could be a reason going on there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like flushing. Hot flushes can. I find some women that would come to me for hot flushes in their 40s and 50s, they would happen after they have a glass of red wine. Isn't that
Yeah,
interesting?
100%. Yeah.
And then when
For
we
me,
remove the red
it was
wine, they'll be
red.
like,
Or
oh,
even now,
and itchy
I don't drink a
skin.
lot. Yeah, but I'll
Yeah.
know if I'm under a lot of stress and I'm not really, really supporting myself. I'm not doing what I'm not practicing what I preach, and then I'll have a glass of wine. My biggest symptom, and it always was, even back in the day, back in when I did have severe anxiety, was itchy skin. And it's the first thing I ask
Mm,
women now when they come in to see me, especially at the tops of the arms. If you go to bed and you notice that your arms are itchy, especially you could be itchy anywhere, but
mm.
especially the upper arm, um, and there's a reason for that. I'll go into in a second, but that's like that's possibly a histamine thing. So I notice now if I drink wine within half an hour,
Get
if I'm
itchy.
scratching, I'm like, hang on, I need to go back and do some work on my
Yeah.
gut. Like my body is giving me those early signals that something's going on.
Ah,
And the
isn't
reason
that
why the
interesting?
itchy skin, especially at the top of the arms, is because when the histamine levels are spiking, it triggers that inflammatory response. And that stimulates our nerve endings and causes localized blood vessels to actually leak. I know, think about that. So
Oh,
which results in our redness and the swelling and the intense itching. So you're thinking more of that intense histamine
mm.
reaction.
Itchy,
That's what's going
heat,
on.
redness, flushing, all the
Yeah.
things.
But
Yeah.
the
I'm
top of the
itchy
arms are
now.
common.
Stop itching. You're making me itchy.
Power of suggestion. But the top of the arms are common sites for those flares because there is a denser concentration of mast cells
Mm,
or an underlying skin sensitivity. So mast
mm.
cells are more concentrated in our upper arms. I found that really interesting when I learnt that.
Oh, that's interesting because
Mm.
when my son was younger, he was obsessed with cherry tomatoes. You had to hide them from him. He would eat a whole punnet and he just loved them. And he used to get really itchy in his upper arms and like
Mm,
redness. I often wonder whether that was from the tomatoes. Come to think of
probably
it.
was. Yeah.
Oh, it's
That's
funny
the
how,
first thing I ask women when they're coming
yeah,
in with those
didn't
things
think of
is
that.
like, do you have itchy upper arms when you go to bed at night? And they're like, yes. Okay,
Yeah.
let's look at the
It's like
histamine.
you're a fortune teller and you know things. They're like, oh my gosh, you can see into my soul. Yeah, so your histamine bucket is usually, let's imagine your histamine bucket's usually sitting around 70% most days. You're like, yeah, I got this. I can have my wine and my chocolate and my aged cheese. I'm fine. It's manageable, but the week before your period, perhaps your hormones are changing. That's going to add another 20%. Then you have a glass of wine, you're eating leftovers. And I was actually doing a bit of research before, and you can't like if you live off leftovers, heating it up doesn't kill the histamine
No.
levels. Like they actually sometimes increase histamine when you heat them up. I know everyone's like, but this is how I live my life. I'm gonna have to cook a new meal every day. Um, you're stressed from work and suddenly the bucket starts overflowing. You get home, and all of a sudden all those symptoms appear. If you're driving along and thinking, wow, that's
That
me.
sounds like me.
Um, who should think about this? I'm thinking people who notice symptoms after wine and in leftovers,
Yeah. Like I
hay
said,
fever season.
yep, the
Yeah,
itchy arms at
there, the
nighttime.
itchy arms around hormones, fluctuations, people
Yep.
with gut issues. So if you're known to have gut issues, check out your histamine levels. What are you doing? Um, if you take an antihistamine and all your symptoms reduce, like
Yeah.
that's a clear
That's a clue.
sign. Something's
Good
going on there.
thinking.
Maybe you
100%.
took an antihistamine just after you ate a punnet of strawberries. Oh, maybe you went to the strawberry farm and you overdid it on the strawberries. I've done that before. Oopsie.
I have to.
Um, yeah, but yeah, not everyone with anxiety has histamine issues, as you were saying, and not everyone with histamine issues has anxiety. So it's worth exploring it though, booking in with a practitioner to really go into the depths of that to see whether the pattern fits. Don't go home and just start treating yourself with it and
No.
with histamine intolerance because it may not be that. Um,
Yes.
what are some practical takeaways we can give to our audience, Nat, if they're driving along and they're thinking, holy crap, my arm's itchy. I don't know if it's the power of suggestion or it's those strawberries I ate. What can they do?
Exactly. Well, become a detective in your own life. So notice these patterns, the things that we've mentioned. Maybe keep a symptom and food diary. So that's
Ah,
the first thing I always ask my patients to do. And the first thing when they come into my clinic, they do a 7-day food and mood diary. And it also goes into, the gut, how they're pooping, all those sorts of things. And maybe support your gut health. Look at the foods. Maybe try eliminating a couple of the foods. See if it does help. Big one, as we all say, manage your stress levels.
mm,
But also, as I mentioned before, you don't need to eliminate these foods forever. Even if you come and see someone like us in our clinics,
we love
it's not
food.
a forever elimination. It's just taking that flame away from the open wound, which is continuously, creating this issue while we do the deeper healing work of the gut, regulating the hormones, reducing the stress, so lifestyle. And
Yes.
then we slowly reintroduce those foods back again. Like we said, you could try it yourself, but it's really hit and miss. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. If you're already suffering from overwhelm and anxiety, we don't recommend you do this.
No.
Seek that proper guidance from a professional health practitioner.
Yes, all the things. Absolutely. And if you're not sure how to manage your stress, I mean, go back and listen to some of our other podcasts where we pretty much talk about it in every podcast, don't we?
Yeah, we
Talk
do.
about stress. Ugh, it's part and parcel of life. We can't all go and sit on an island or do nothing. I
No.
wish that'd be nice.
It'd be nice.
I get
It
bored
would
after a
be.
while. I need to be productive in
Yeah,
some way.
I
I'd be
would too.
building a little hut. Do you want to throw a reflective question out to our audience?
Sure. So, if you looked back over the last few weeks, have you ever noticed anxiety tends to appear after certain foods, during allergy season, after poor sleep, just before menstruation, or following periods of high stress? Could your body be trying to show you a pattern rather than simply giving you a diagnosis? And could it be your histamine bucket is actually overflowing?
Yes, I'm reflecting on that. I've
Yeah.
definitely overflown the bucket when I went away on holidays, that's for sure. Too many wine tastings and cheeses. Do like
You
cheeses.
had a good time. But you
Cheese,
also
baby
have the
cheese.
tools being a nutritionist to be able to
Yeah, I was aware
know.
of what I was doing. Let's be honest. I'm not guilt. I'm guilty. Guilty as charged.
We
Um,
all are. At some
but
points, we're
I
human.
enjoyed it. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful
Exactly.
histamine
It
holiday.
filled your
Histamine fueled
it filled
holiday.
your other buckets though, didn't it?
I did. I damaged
Yes.
one bucket. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, if only the overflow would go out into the world and not into my body. Um, anyway, yeah, at the Anxiety Compass, we believe anxiety isn't always something to silence. It can be something to understand. Sometimes your compass is pointing towards a difficult conversation, and sometimes it's pointing towards burnout, and sometimes it's pointing towards your physiology. There's just so many things that this compass can be pointing at, Nat. Your
It
body
really
has
can.
many ways of asking for attention before it even shouts. Is it histamine? This week, instead of fighting your symptoms, I encourage you to get curious about them and ask yourself what patterns am I noticing? What might my body be trying to communicate? Because the anxiety compass isn't trying to convince you that you're broken, it's trying to point you back to your true north. And that begins with curiosity, not fear. Not fear, Nat. not fear.
Not fear.
So many of us are
No,
living in fear. Do you have anything else you want to add, or we're wrapping
I
it
think
up?
we should leave it there. I
It's
think
a
we, yeah,
wrap.
let's wrap it up. I think we did. That was a good little deep dive into, or a
Histamine.
semi-deep dive into histamine and
I know.
anxiety.
Now I'm going to go and eat some strawberries and have a glass of wine. No, I'm not. Probably
No,
won't touch them today. All right.
10 a.m. in the morning. We need to have a talk, Sammy, after
I
we
know.
hit.
We'll catch up. Not today. My histamine bucket's nearly at the brim. Cool. That'll be a fun little conversation to have at the next event gathering. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Anxiety Compass. If you loved this episode, share it with a friend who needs a little laugh and a lot of calm. We'll see you in the next one. Keep following your true north. Disclaimer time. Sammy and Natalie may be clinical nutritionists, but we're not your personal doctors. What you hear is for learning and laughing, not diagnosing or prescribing. If things feel bigger than you, call your doctor or local support line or reach out to a qualified health professional. They've got your back too.